Well, welcome back to the Primal Pursuits podcast. I'm your host or co-host, Mike Merrill, and we got Kanyon on as well. Say hey, Kanyon.
What up?
We're on with our good friend, Mr. Sidney Smith. How you doing today, Sidney?
Hey, I am great. Thanks, Merrill's, Kanyon, and Mike. Appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir. So Sid, you know, you and I have known each other a very long time. Do you want to tell how we know each other and keep it PG-13?
Keep it
Just kidding.
PG-13.
I was telling Kanyon that story about the hot pots earlier, so kind of funny.
It's funny how that story came up again just recently. I had a friend that wanted to go hike there, and she's like, have you ever been? And I'm like, well, yeah, I've been. Let me tell you, this is the first time I saw my first boobs.
That's pretty fun.
Real quick, Mike and I go way back. I grew up in Provo, and he lived in Provo in that same ward, and he was like either a scoutmaster or some kind of church youth leader. And Mike's not that old. What are you, what, 51, 52? 51. And I'm 42, so you would have been like super fresh. I mean, you're still pretty fresh, brother. But yeah, we're out there, and it's a scout hike, and we go to this place I think it's a hot springs, Diamond Hot Springs. And for those that in the Utah Canyon know about Diamond Hot Springs, they know that it's kind of a clothes optional type of place sometimes. But we went at night.
Full disclosure, I didn't know at the time that it was clothing optional. Me and the other youth group leader, we thought we were going there late at night. I was telling Ken,
Yeah.
it was almost midnight when we went. We're like, wild hair. Let's just take these boys up and go hit the hot pots. So,
anyway. That's back in the days. Anything was whatever how it goes. But yeah, we go out there and start hiking. Now, I wasn't the best hiker. My feet, which with this disease I have, I couldn't walk very far. And I think I was the last guy, and I just took a wrong turn and ended up, at another pool, which just so happened to be some nudist people. And there, lo and behold, was my first boobs that I saw, and they weren't great boobs. It was more like looking at some hairy tube socks. It was pretty frustrating.
There you go.
And I just remember then I was like, man, is this what everybody's been talking about at school? Because these aren't that great. But sure enough, Mike was there and rescued me and told me not to tell my parents. So if my parents are listening, that was my youth experience as a kid.
Yeah, and whatever was going on, I didn't actually witness whatever you're talking about. So it must have, anyway, disappeared before I got there. But there we had probably 8 or 10 young men. We were up on a scout camp. Yeah, I was a scout master and also a church group leader. And yeah, we were on a camp out up Diamond Fork Canyon. So pretty funny. So yeah, Sid and I go way back. And then since then, Sid, why don't you share how we reconnected and kind of what keeps us crossing paths so often?
Yeah, I grew up hunting, and I really got into hunting as I became an amputee a little bit more, just because of the whole sense of challenge, bow hunting. Then I started, kind of following people that were motivating to me that were into the bow hunting scene at the time. Cameron Haynes was just kind of getting into it. Read his book and noticed Mike was also a fan and friend of Cam Haynes. And then I believe we met on one of his runs. He hosted a run, and this is like the very infant stage of mountain ops, but we connected at a run, and I was like, holy crap, I remember you. And then just through the whole hunting industry and we've connected at a lot of events and seen each other. We've shot bows together at the TAC and just been good friends.
Yeah, it's been really fun to reconnect with you and your dad. He was one of the youth leaders too, so just such a great man. Always loved and looked up to your dad. He was a great mentor to a lot of us younger leaders in our church group at the time and in the neighborhood. And so just come from an awesome family, and it was really fun to meet up again this way. So.
Well, thank you. No, my dad talked highly of you too, so that's good.
And Kanyon, when did you meet Sid, and where was that at?
Yeah, it was the Hunt Expo 2024, so just last year at a booth. I can't remember the name of the booth, but yeah, that's where we met up.
Disabled Outdoorsman. That was our booth. Yeah.
Can you kind of paint us a picture on like your background? I know you just mentioned you're pretty heavily involved in the hunting scene. What else is there behind? Because I don't know you too much, Sid. Even for me and the audience, can you paint us a little bit of a picture of who you are, what your life looks like, and maybe some goals that you're pursuing?
Oh man, that's a loaded question, man. You start talking about goals, you're not gonna get me off this show. Golly, so who am I? Well, I like to party. That is one thing that I show up and then I like to party. But no, just an average Joe kind of guy is on my perspective, but from everybody else, they say I do awesome stuff, I guess. I like I said, I love hunting just for the reason that it's something I grew up doing, and then the challenge behind it as far as the physical aspect, the mental aspect, and then it's just I love the way it feeds my family and so forth. And then while I'm hunting, the pursuit of an animal is a motivation to me. It gives me purpose, gives me drive, where I'm not thinking about my problems, such as my prosthetic legs that I have. And by doing so, it takes my mind off those daily problems. And I've used that with this charity that I work with called Disabled Outdoorsman Utah. And what we do, we're a 501c3 where we take people hunting and try to give them that same experience where they're learning the same purposes behind it. They understand that, you just because it's you are in a chair or you have a prosthetic leg or you have other kind of disabilities, the animal doesn't care that you are an amputee. It doesn't feel bad for you and pop out of the bush and say, "Oh, I feel so sorry. Why don't you go ahead and shoot me?" You have to work at it just like anybody else. You just have to do it different. And so that's kind of the gist of my work inside this charity. Of course, I look a lot different. Most people know me with my pants off instead of my pants on.
Wow, partier, huh?
Yeah. So I walk around because I wear jeans for work or dress slacks and people, I'm just an average Joe. But once I put on the shorts, people are like, "Oh, you don't have any feet or legs or so forth." And so that's typically how people recognize me. But just a backstory on how that happened. I lost my legs to a disease that I was born with called Charcot-Marie tooth, and just a synopsis, it's a progressive genetic disorder that deforms the muscles and everything functioning inside the below the knee type structure, and it gets slowly worse. Where throughout my whole life, I had surgeries, I've had braces, I've had all kinds of complications. I spent a lot of high school in crutches and so forth, and as I turned 33, it got to the point where I just couldn't walk anymore. And the doctors looked at my feet and they gave me an option of being in a wheelchair if I wanted to keep them, or if I wanted to take the chance on prosthetics. So in 2015, so I'm almost at my 10-year mark, I became a double amputee.
Wow. Well, it hasn't slowed you down any. In fact, I would say it's probably propelled you because I've seen you get after. I mean, you and I have done trail runs together. Like you said, we shot bows all over Snowbird Mountain, up Little Cottonwood Canyon, Big Cottonwood Canyon, over the years. And outside of you wearing shorts, for the most part, nobody would even know that you've got any kind of condition like that.
No, well, thank you. It's definitely took some time to get used to, but like I said, it just has given me a different perspective of life for sure. There's been good highs and lows in my experience, but ultimately the highs have been a lot higher to even think about the lows. Like if I were to look back and at the eternal perspective of everything, the Lord gave this trial to me for a reason, and I would pick this trial 100 out of 100 times, just because of the blessings and things I've learned from it. And you're right, like it's actually made me be more active than I could had I would been born with a perfect body.
That's amazing. And I know, I mean, obviously your wife is a rock star and I met her a few times, but behind every strong man like this, there's often a great woman in the back helping out, right? And making things go.
Absolutely, man. That you nailed it on the head. Like you hear these kind of, stories from different individuals of what they've accomplished, and a lot of times it's the unsung hero is the supporting person. Like she didn't have to, be a caregiver for so long. Like she didn't realize this was all going up. She didn't sign up for this, but she stuck with me for the most part, right? And she's put up with me, even though sometimes she sees all the ventures that I try to pursue and do, and the pain that I put my body with, and she's like, "Man, we can just take it easy. Come on now." So,
Yeah. So Sid, and I know this backstory, and I was telling Kanyon a little bit about some of your journey before we jumped on, but why, and you can get into your triathlon, your a full Ironman you did. I was telling Kane about that. It was amazing. I was watching it remotely here. I believe you're in Florida and it was late here at night watching you go across the finish line. I mean, I was crying. I know people were watching and crying from all over the place watching you achieve that. But tell us about that journey. How did it start and why does it keep you going the direction you're going?
oh, that's a great question. Yeah, where that Ironman, and that's been a big anchor in my life of the triathlon scene, and just to rewind a little bit, I didn't even know what a triathlon really was, until I was in the hospital when I lost my legs, and on TV was the competition. They had it broadcast on NBC, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. And I just this feeling, that hey, how awesome would it be if I, could ever run? Like I've never even ran as a kid because of this disease, but when you see the people all like Oscar Pistorius or other amputees that can run, I thought, well, maybe this is possible. And so I started thinking and doing some research, and found out that yeah, they make prosthetics that allow you to bike and allow you to run that far. And so right then and there in the hospital, I started telling everybody, hey, this is what I want to do. Of course, people thought I was crazy because I'd never even ran a mile or even a 5K before. And but in the end, it ended up being a big drive for me. And it wasn't just like, get out of the hospital bed and run the race. Like it took me about 5 years to train and build up the endurance. And I had some setbacks with prosthetics and infections, and getting used to that distance, and then start off at a half marathon and build up to a marathon, and then eventually do the Ironman. And crossing that finish line was really one of those things that it's like a moment that you can't really explain to people, like when you first see your child born, but to achieve that goal was just, it's hard to put words in it. Like it was just a pivotal moment. Not only was it because I achieved something that I wanted to do, but I had two great moments or around that Ironman that has developed me into a better human. For example, um, I did the Ironman not just for me, like I wanted to for me, but also I wanted to show to my kids that that you can have hard things happen to you, or you can not have the best life, but yet you can turn things around, or no matter what challenges are portrayed from you, you can still retrieve your dreams no matter what other circumstances are. And as a father before then, I struggled through pain with my feet, and I just wasn't that figure. And so here's my chance that I could and to be that person. So that was the main purpose driven behind doing this Ironman is to now show them, hey, you could do hard things no matter what. And as great of a feeling as it was to cross that finish line, the icing on the cake, or I should say the most pinnacle moment that I get, even emotional thinking about, is when I came home from the race. My family didn't come with me, just my wife. But when I came home from the race, uh, the town that I live in, Vernal, they did a big surprise where they got, a lot of the community members, and they had the sheriff pull me over, a couple blocks in front of my house, and then and throw me in the back of his truck, and then turn on the siren. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then when I get to my house, they had all these fire trucks and news stations, and the town was there, and they had hot chocolate, and there my kids were running alongside the truck, or the police truck, and everybody cheering me on, and they were like, oh wow, my dad's a hero. And I was able to tell them, hey guys, this could be you. You could do whatever you want. And they've made that a huge impact. So that was, finding that purpose was one. And the other thing that I gained from that race was gratitude. So, growing up with this disease, obviously I'm a kid. I can see myself comparing to other kids that have great abilities, that are able to play football and basketball and run, where I struggled in those areas. And deep down, I thought, well, this isn't fair. None of my siblings had this disease. None of my friends had this disease, or anything like this. Why me? And I kind of built a little resentment towards God, just because I thought maybe I wasn't loved as much. And it's just, I was immature thinking process. I didn't understand that. But that deep down stuck with me for so many years, even as an adult, that I thought, this is just the way it is. I'm just going to have to deal with it. It is, God might love me, but maybe not as much as anybody else. It's just a curse that I have, or everybody has their own, cross to bear. And, but when I was on that course, I hit a wall towards the end. Mile 133, I talk about this a lot. Mile 133, mentally, physically, I was just drained at that point. My sockets were starting to hurt so badly, that with all the blisters and the pain, that I couldn't walk, really. It was so painful. I'd take my leg off and it'd be bloody everywhere, and I hurried, put it back on, and I'm looking at my Garmin watch, and it tells me, okay, this is your pace, and I have to complete this race under 17 hours. And what was, a decent pace is now turning into a 26, 27, 28-minute mile pace, because I'm taking so long with this pain and adjustments and stopping. And it dawned on me, with about 7 miles left, I was like, I'm not going to finish in time. And so I kind of was trying to find some kind of words of encouragement. And so I thought I need to, was praying to Heavenly Father. I says, God, give me something that's going to get my mind off of this negativity. That is, I worked this hard for it to just end and not make this race. So the first thing that came into my mind, it was my family, like how much I love my family. That brought me joy. And then I started thinking of things that I was grateful for, like my employer that's allowed me to do all these things, and that was patient with me through all these struggles and so forth. And then, the fact that I'm out here in Florida when it was 88 degrees, and back in Vernal, it was only 2 degrees. And then I was also, starting to just try to fish for anything that I was grateful for. And I was thinking, this disease I have affects other muscles in my body, such as my hands. And at the time, my hands were working really well. And so I was grateful that my hands were working, and my eyesight was working. And then my spine is good, and other parts of my body was good. But then I started thinking about working down my body, and started thinking about my feet and my prosthetics. And I was like, I never thought about this, but without these prosthetics, there's some things that I've gained. For example, it's opened many doors that have benefited my family, because of this disease. It's given me the opportunity to share my story and help other people through their trials. It's taught me things such as patience and perseverance, and that's in turn has built this skill that's given me promotions at work. It's made me a better spouse, a better father, and ultimately, it's made me a more humble person because of that. It's brought me closer to God, and so just over that, it's just an overwhelming flood of feeling that gratitude can give you, and as I was going through these thoughts and processes, like the pain that I was experiencing was just basically put on hold. It just didn't exist. And I picked up the pace, and I just kept thinking about all these moments. And finally, I realized this moment of resentment that I had, or because I thought this was a curse, was actually a way of God saying, hey, I actually do love you. This is just how we're going to teach you how to be better, and how I'm going to make you a better human, and love life, and realize that I've always been there for you. And so just before I know it, I don't even remember how it all came about. That last 7 miles was just like a cloud to me. I was able to cross that finish line. So those are the two things that Ironman has brought to me that I've learned was finding that purpose, and ultimately gratitude.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, that's a pretty incredible, pretty incredible feat that you did. Given the adversity that you had been given, and kind of like how you were talking about your internal dialogue that you had in that last 7 miles. I'm also curious, what did your internal dialogue look like, right after your operation for the amputations? I'm sure that was incredibly difficult, and I'm sure your mind was, firing in all sorts of directions. But in the months after, and what did that internal dialogue look like?
Yeah, well, it was fear, is what really was that in dialogue. Like, I didn't know any other amputees in the town that I live in, or even really online. I mean, I knew a few on Facebook, but I didn't know what this was going to bring. What was the challenges? Like, I've already spent so much time in the hospital, and I actually had to go back to the hospital a few months after my first amputation and redo it. And then, so it was basically starting over, because they had to cut up higher. And I just was kind of at a rock bottom, per se. And because of the fear of the unknown, of like, okay, am I always going to be dealing with pain and operations my whole life? Am I ever going to do the things I love, hunting, fishing, hiking? Am I ever going to play with my kids? Am I going to be able to keep a job? Am my wife going to find me attractive? Am I going to be sad all the time? Am I ever going to experience joy? All those things were crashing down, and I just honestly felt like a huge burden to everybody, that the thoughts of suicide were weighing heavily. Like, I was thinking about how to do it, how to make it less messy, and just because I felt like I was better off not being this big burden to all the people that love me, and are trying to help me through this. And so that was the kind of a rock bottom for me right after the amputations. But what kind of got me out of it was, I quickly was starting to panic, because I knew a lot of people loved me, and I didn't want to bring this pain of suicide to them. And I just started praying, trying to find some kind of solution. And God has a funny way of revealing things. It's not always been like words of like, Sidney, you need to do this. It's always some things that I see in my life that now are starting to make sense. For example, my daughter, who's now 11 years old, well, she'll be 11 here in about a week. She was learning how to walk, and and I was learning how to walk. We were kind of, ironically, we're learning to walk together. And she's just a sweetheart. She's my cuddle bunny. She still is. and we're trying to walk together. And it just kind of dawned on me, like, it's not fair in my mind at the time that God gave me this trial. But for her to now know that her dad had committed suicide, that is going to bring all kinds of pain in her life. I can't control what God gave me. Like, that's something I can't specifically control, this disease. It's going to happen. I have to figure out how to live with it. But I can control the outcome of my daughter's life in that area, whether I'm going to bring her that a massive amount of pain. And so I quickly thought, I can't have these thoughts. I need to find some kind of joy in this environment. And so I just thought real quickly, how do you get rid of fear? What is the antidote to fear? Because that's what's holding me back. And the answer is faith. Faith is the opposite of fear. If you feed fear so much, if you feed faith so much, the more you feed that, the more it will grow. But they counterbalance each other. They work in the same way, but they can counterbalance each other. And so I just told myself, I need to have a little bit of faith and feed on that I'm going to get better, that God does have a plan for me, and that I am still capable of doing amazing things as long as I hold on to this faith and continue to keep exercising it and building it and nourishing it. And that's what really got me out of that fear.
What were some ways that you nourished that side of faith? Because I know you can have that initial thought and that can pull you out of a dark place initially, but I do know that as life goes on and stuff, that dark side still comes at you. So what did you do to maintain the consistency on feeding your faith instead of the fear?
That's a great question. I've not been asked that question before, and so kudos to that one, because that's a deep one. If the thing is I'll be real with y'all. That fear never goes away. I truly believe that fear is a product of our adversary, Satan, and that is a very impactful tool, if not his best tool that he uses on individuals. You see what fear can do to so many different people in our country, and what massive power it can have. But for me, it doesn't go away. I have to keep my foot on the gas pedal of faith. I have to continue to exercise it, still pray to my Heavenly Father for strength in that area. Because if I let that slide, if I say, okay, I'm just going to, just be in this level of comfort and not exercise my faith, or not continue to trust in the Lord, then that's when Satan finds his way to get back in. And before you know, it's not like all of a sudden, bam, it hits you. It's just started sliding and throwing these little bits of, I call them Cheerios. He throws little bits of Cheerios, because if you get hit with that whole box, you're going to be like, holy crap. But eventually, all those Cheerios add up, and before you know it, you're in this hole. So what I try to do things that, I try to keep my relationship with God strong. I exercise things that, trials or purposes that he gives me, rewards, serving other people, such as like doing this charity, sharing my story when I go and public speak around the nation. I try to help people in that area, and by serving other people, it's made me realize that this is why I'm here on this earth, is to serve others, share my story, help them through that. And it makes my faith stronger in the Lord, that this is the plan that he provided for me.
Yeah, and I got to congratulate you, Sid. I mean, I know you get a lot of kudos, and like you mentioned, there, people do notice the exceptional things that you continue to accomplish. But I've watched your journey again from more humble beginnings, when I was your youth basketball coach and you weren't as fast as the other kids. I didn't know why. I just knew, I remember the conversation. Well, Sid has some problems with his feet. There's something going on with his feet. So he struggles to, and I remember, you almost would walk a little pigeon toed, even I could just tell like something's going on. but I didn't know well enough at that time. And so later when I found you on social media again for the first time, it was right around the time that you were getting your amputation. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I had no idea. Like, I thought, so there was this big gap for me. And obviously, you know, we've remained good friends and participated in a lot of similar things since then. So I've been able to keep in touch with you quite a bit. But watching that journey, and you know, you're talking about feeding that faith, you have freaking ratcheted it up continually. Like, you're not just, you know, accomplishing one thing and getting to this summit. Like, you're looking for the next hike, and you keep, you know what I mean? Like, you're not, I know you're into hunting and fishing, but you're bow hunting and you're killing stuff. You know, you know, you killed some awesome animals with your bow, which is hard to do when you're completely able-bodied. And then you go and you do this triathlon, and now you're doing some other training and fitness things that are just unbelievable. I mean, you're freaking shredded now. So talk about that. Like what is it that is this unquenchable thirst that just makes you are so driven, and it's just awesome to watch.
Mike, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I don't know Kanyon, but I know that if he's a product of your, that I know that he's got some awesome genetics there. But Mike, I know I'm preaching to the choir when it comes to doing hard things, because you are an absolute beast. I know that for a fact. But to answer your question, I this whole quench of thirst of doing hard things is part of the ways that I use to keep that fear in the back seat. To keep Satan back there is I'm holding on to something onto the next level. I love the idea of challenge. It's something in the brain. It's I don't know if you listen to the Huberman podcast, but he talks about this element in our brain that if you exercise things that are going to be discomforting, you become stronger and stronger. And to the point where when you're doing hard things intentionally to exercise that, you're purposely putting yourself in these situations just to exercise this part of your brain. And when you do those things, hard stuff that comes around, like the stresses of life, they don't seem that hard to you because you're able to see it from a different perspective. You can capitalize it. You're not letting fears or stress take over these problems. That's part of the reason why I do it. My thing is as I'm completing, and I'm like, for example, I'm doing the Ironman, I'm already thinking about the next goal before I even finish the race. I've climbed different mountains I've wanted to climb. Last year, I wanted to compete in my first bodybuilding competition, and so I started hitting the weights, which I really never did ever. And I did a bodybuilding competition and got 4th place. It was an awesome experience to learn about my body. Quickly realized that I love food, and the sacrifice of eating clean all the time and in a calorie deficit is a test. And so I enjoyed that. This year I'm trying to do different things where I'm starting another business with my speaking career. I'm trying to invest in myself in speaking and trying to do that more on a possible full-time level if it works out. And then also I want to swim to Alcatraz Island and back. I'm just working I'm working out the logistics. I got a captain that will charter or swim next to me. But the problem is most people will swim. Well, they'll take you out there and then you swim back, but I want to go there and back, and it creates some current challenges and
Literally and figuratively. Oh,
yeah, some current challenges. There's really only one weekend in September, which sucks because I like September for other reasons, but there's one weekend in September, so I'm just looking on sponsors and funding to get my expenses helped on that, because my wife's like, well, you're not paying for that. But to swim across there's some challenges there. There's sharks. That time of year is when there's a lot of sharks in that bay. So there's different things, but that's the goal. Mid-September is to swim out there and back and get that under my belt.
Yeah, and you have a background in swimming, which is also pretty interesting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that too? Because you are quite
Yeah.
an athlete, just, you know, you don't have all your limbs.
Well, swimming kind of came by default. Like it just, you know, I couldn't run, so I like, well, you could pick up golf or swimming, and so I'm like, well, you know, I don't. At the time, golf wasn't that cool, but now kind of look at it now. I wish I did take up golf, but uh, I did. I was on the swim team. I swam for Timpview High School in Provo, and then went to BYU and swam there for a year, and then I went on my mission, and then that was my end of my swimming. But yeah, it's something I enjoy. It's kind of like a meditation for me too. I still swim just for the heck of it. And of course, with the Ironman being a 2.4 mile swim, you spend a lot of time in the pool.
Alcatraz, that's crazy. I mean, that's unbelievable.
That's what makes me the most nervous isn't necessarily like the distance or the waves or even the temperature, because it can be 60s or 50s. It's the sharks, because I was born in 1983, and that's when Jaws was in its peak. And even like when we were kids going to Lake Powell, I'd freak out swimming in Lake Powell thinking that Jaws somehow found his way into that lake.
Well, so Sid, you know, you've got how many kids now? You're a
I
father besides?
Yep, I am a father of four. That is my greatest accomplishment. I have a boy that's turning 16 in a couple weeks, a girl that's turning 14 in a couple weeks, and a girl that's turning 11 in a couple weeks, and then the baby, which is now 7 years old, and she is the master of the house. She intimidates everyone, even the dog. She runs the household.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you're always getting your kids out fishing. I see all the time. I mean, you're always taking them on adventures. You're a very involved father. So I mean, man, you're just you're really living the dream here, maximizing your time on earth. I mean, I'm just so impressed at your example.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah, kids bring the best joy. It's if there's one thing I would love in my life is to have my kids better than me, have a better life than me. So
Wait till you have grandbabies, man. It's like 10x multiplier. So
you know what? And congratulations to you guys for that, because that's awesome. And I'm funny because I wasn't the best with the little babies. Like I didn't have the patience of the burping or getting up in the middle of the night. My wife was amazing at that. But now I don't know if I hit maturity. I think men don't really mature until they're 40. So I'm sorry, Kanyon, you got some
You're
growing
still
to do,
working there.
but
Yeah,
but
always, right?
I hit 40 and I look at my wife and I already had the vasectomy. I'm like, honey, I just went to the doctor and I found out I can get this reversed. I really want another child. And she's like, no, no. Can you? She's like, no. And she was like, okay, that's fine. And then we'll go over somebody's house that has a baby. And I'll be like, I just know, like, I'm like, do not touch this baby. It's mine till we're here. And I love little babies. And so I told her again, I said, like, I can get it reversed. It does not,
that's
I
funny.
know it's possible, but she's for sure not for that. But
How do you prioritize your time with your family versus all these ventures you got going on?
yeah, it's a great question. And really, I guess it's been somewhat of a beam between my wife and I, because you kind of grasp onto something you become obsessed with. And there's been times it was tension. For example, the Ironman was very time consuming. Every Saturday, I was gone. I was worthless on Sundays because I was so tired. But Saturdays, you know, I'm working, you know, exercising 10 to 15 hours that day from sun up to sundown just to train. And then, you know, every morning and so forth. So like a lot of the yard work got neglected, time with the family. And so, you know, when I crossed the finish line at the Ironman, the race director actually made it a big deal and let my wife actually put the medal over my neck. And, you know, there was tears and joy. And of course, I give her a big old kiss. But one thing she said is that's the last one.
I was just gonna say it's funny because I did 75 hard a couple years ago, and my wife's big into fitness. She's worked out her whole life. I mean, we have that good symbiotic relationship around fitness and health, but at the same time, me just doing 75 hard was really hard for her because it dominated my day no matter what. It was like it was ever present. I mean, all the way down to 10:30 at night, I'm pounding a can and a half of tuna fish because I'm trying to get those green checks to get my macros in to get everything exactly how I needed it to be. And so I wasn't just keeping myself from the limits of not overdoing carbs and calories, but I was making sure I was hitting every ideal metric on the diet. And so I don't know how. I mean, training for an Ironman like that, like you could have just as well taken that trophy and put it on your wife's neck too. And I'm sure you felt that
Oh
way.
yeah,
So
absolutely. She was the unsung hero in that one. But I learned some things about that because it did put tension on my wife. The bodybuilding thing, even though like it didn't disrupt much, like she couldn't cook for me. I had to cook my own meals. I had to leave, like if they ordered pizza, I had to leave the house and go sit in the trailer because it was that bad of a temptation. So to manage that with my family, I've learned over the years, happy wife, happy life. And that is the true fact. You hear that all the time. And at the end of the year in December, I start working on my goals of what I want to accomplish for 2025 and so forth. And I share that with her, and she has to be on board. Otherwise, I have to take it off. So there's a little bit of negotiation, and sometimes things changes, and I want to work with her on hers. But ultimately, family and God comes first. If the other goals are just may have to be on hold. So it's that's where we try to work it out, is finding that balance. I want to make sure she's okay with that, because the last thing I want to do is to make things harder at home, and it makes me feel selfish if I'm trying to take away from my family and my kids.
yeah, and even the communication is so critical. And I know you're like Dan Staten without shape. He's a good friend, and I know you know Dan and what he preaches too. And that communication, when it comes to hunting and when you're going to be out of town and what your tags are and what the costs are and the finances and the budget, and it goes into all of these things, these pursuits that we have to try and achieve excellence or do difficult things. It's if your wife or your significant other or your kids are an anchor, or their schedule's an anchor on those goals, it's almost going to be impossible to achieve. And if you do achieve them, you may sacrifice the family that again should be that higher priority. So that's really well stated.
Are on your wall. You cannot replace that relationship if you lost with your family. You can't get that time back. And so I just don't think it's worth it. Like I said, I've not perfect at it. I've caused a little bit of argument. It's been a sensitive subject, but I feel now that I'm in my 40s, I'm maturing, and I'm now being smarter about it, and I'm getting communication and permission first, which doesn't make doesn't make it sound like I'm kind of manly, but I'll tell you what, I am a happy guy right now.
Well, and I think too that and I want the audience to understand from my perspective, and I believe from yours too, a little bit of healthy tension is good. A little bit of, I mean, if you're not pushing and really trying to grind to maximize and push those limits and communicating that, then you are going to get back and slip back onto the couch, and you're just going to take the path of least resistance, and you're probably not going to achieve a lot notable and become who you could have become and shown those kids how to do hard things and that they can overcome adversity, and that it is worth fighting for things that are good for you. And what's good for you, if it's done appropriately, can be good for them and can be best for the family too, right?
Yep, it's a balance. And luckily my wife knows that, I mean, there is a point where she's got to accept, hey, if I don't let him
Yeah,
go
yeah.
after these dreams, it's going to affect him to the core. And so there is a fine balance of that.
Kanyon, what do you're a young father, you're part of the reason I'm a granddad, which I love. Um, you're on that other side of it. What are you doing to achieve uh, that communication and make sure that you're on the right path as you go towards goals like Sid and I have done in our past.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key that you guys mentioned was the communication. Like me and my wife have great communication when it comes to, okay, this is, I mean, more on a daily basis. Like this is what I need to get done today. Here, because my wife's a fitness girl. I love the bodybuilding aspect, not to a competition level, but you know, I'm in the gym and I'm pretty dedicated to that lifestyle. And so there's a lot of like little bits of and pieces that are important to communicate on. Like, okay, what time am I going to the gym? What time is she going to the gym? Who's going to be with our baby? And so I think the communication aspect has been awesome. And then also knowing when to put on the gas more and when to kind of slow down. For example, okay, I for the next month I'll get up every night with the baby so that you can get that extra little bit of sleep and so that you can perform a little bit better in this aspect, or you know, entrepreneurial aspects on needing specific attention and energy on this day. Here's what, you know, my wife can do to help me maximize that opportunity too. So it all comes down to the communication. And we, you know, in the beginning, as every new parent does, you kind of are getting the hang of things, and that communication isn't all there, especially when the sleep isn't right. And so I think it was pretty a pretty fun time figuring out, you know, how important the little things are when it comes to talking it out. So you hit the nail on the head with that, Sid.
Well, I'm glad that you are working that with your wife. I do have bad news though for you, Kanyon. As your kids get older,
Yep,
there's just it gets more complex. Where I'm dealing with,
I'm
you
sure.
know, with the boys knocking on the door, want to talk to my girls, and kids sports, and then there's just so many variables as they get older, and Mike knows about this. Like kids, I'm now starting to worry about, monitoring what their phones and their boyfriends are trying to knock down the door, and getting involved there. And then my, kids with jobs and sports and travel teams, and they get expensive. It's just so many things. And so you try to get a structured plan together, and all of a sudden, like, the kids just love to mess with it. So you just got to learn how to adjust a little bit, but keep your priorities, and raising them, and to in that relationship with God is probably the best thing you could do. And I'm sure He'll have the rest for you.
Well,
Yeah.
and Sid, you talking about that, being an example to your children of how to do that and showing them your priorities by example is, one of the best things you could do, because actions do speak louder than words, and the do as I do, not as I say is a lot more powerful and impactful to these kids than I think we sometimes realize.
Part of like being an example. So you mentioned briefly about your bodybuilding competition, and I mean, you know, I've been involved in that space, so I understand the amount of dedication and the behind the scenes, what that looks like. And I don't think a lot of people understand the type of work and consistency that's required to be able to step on stage. So would you mind kind of sharing your experience with how that was from start to finish?
Yeah, I mean, I knew nothing about it prior to. Like, I go to the gym to, like, get in shape for, hunting, or, with triathlon stuff, you didn't really hit the gym that much. You did a few things, but most of it's just that endurance side of stuff. But I was playing basketball about a year before my show, and I tore my MCL, and it was awful. And so I couldn't do anything. I didn't realize how important your knees were until you actually wreck them. But so I just went to the gym and started lifting, and I was like, why is it all of a sudden, like, firmer in this area around this muscle? I was like, this is interesting. And then my doctor at the time, I was my dad, he had a heart attack, and he it was, we almost lost him. He had to do a quadruple bypass, and that he basically said, yeah, your heart is bad. It's kind of a genetic thing with triglycerides and cholesterol. And so we all went in, and I had my blood work done, kind of figure out what my diet was, but he also did a panel on my testosterone. And so he's like, you have the testosterone of like an 80-year-old guy. He's like, he says like, you should work out. Do you work out? And I'm like, yeah, I just did an Ironman. So he says, we tried some supplements and I couldn't go on. So I eventually got on TRT and started lifting at the gym and started seeing some benefits. And so that kind of triggered into talking to some friends that have done shows. And I thought, is this hard? Is this worth it? And, I thought this would be a nice challenge that I could do to test my body. And so I got talking to some guys and that kind of mentored and coached me and tried to go through that, and come to find out that lifting at the gym and doing a physique competition isn't about how much weight you could put. It's how much food you cannot eat. And so I was like, oh, that sucks, because everyone asked me, well, how much lifting did you do to do this show? Because you look, jacked and ripped. I'm like, uh, just like I lift, every day, but not as much as you think, because they think I'm in the gym 3-4 hours a day to look like that. I'm like, yeah, that's the thing. The thing is, 80% of that work of doing a show is what you eat and when you put in your body. And so I started at 235 is when I was kind of built up. I got to about 240-ish when I started my cut. And then I just kind of figured out where I am with the calorie deficit, what I'm in my cut, and having my macros. So I was trying to eat 240 grams of protein per day, and then try to maintain those carbs and fats to still have my energy, while figuring, okay, I'm at 3,200 calories is where I'm not gaining weight. Let's drop it 500 and see where that goes. And then slowly more and more and more as my body adapt to that, to where I would try to lose about a pound or more a week. And it just kind of had to stay consistent. It was really hard. To the last month where I got down to about 1,800 calories and anywhere from 25 to 50 carbohydrates, and then the dehydration and the salts all came into place towards the very, very end. My wife said I was, that last month, she says you were like on your period the whole time, because I was so hangry. Uh, but the results got better. I had to pose. Like, that was a very awkward feeling. Like, that part was very mentally hard, because I'm like, I'm not a ooh, look at me kind of guy. I'm more of, so to be on the stage, to have people look at me and then with my shirt off, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. And that was very hard, very, very rough. And but yeah, once I got through it, like it felt good to finally accomplish that. It just, I highly encourage that if someone's looking for a bucket list item like a marathon or something like this is really good, because it teaches you, what food really does to your body. Like, when I was starting to eat so clean, um, I had, in order to hit those calories and that protein goal, I couldn't have pork. I couldn't have like a ribeye. I had to have lean protein. So what is it? I got a lot of elk and deer in my fridge. I do a lot of salmon fishing up here at the gorge, and so all that I used in my meal planning, to hit my goals. And when I'm eating clean and not eating all this processed crap, things really started working a lot better for me. Like, I could think clearer, I could focus a lot better. Um, I noticed when I would eat crap like sugar or like a really complex carbohydrate or processed foods, my body would just get all sick and nasty, and I feel like almost like I sinned, and I just had these headaches. And yeah, I know. And then you just become a machine too. Like, I could take um, uh, this big thing of rice, and I could turn a cup of rice into like 5 miles of hiking. Like, it just become this efficient tool. And I quickly realized, like, okay, this is what, you know, a little rice can do, or what a little bit of fats can do, without, you know, sitting there and being like, oh, I'm going to go run, so therefore I could justify and eat 5-6 pieces of pizza. No, you can't do that.
Yeah, it's crazy, and you know, a lot of dedication is required to get lean at all, especially from a, you know, a starting point. Um, what so apart from like the food, obviously food's 80% of the diet of cutting down, getting prepped. Did you have any supplementation that you love, like creatine or like something that helped with your process, or was it mainly just the food?
No, the food was a lot of it. I do the protein shakes as well, but I kind of like, um, I got a little bloaty towards the end with some of the protein shakes, and just because the protein shakes are nice because they're so easy, they're like 100 calories to get about 20-ish grams of protein. But most of it was in the food. But yes, creatine, BCAAs was a big one. Of course, you know, I love my caffeine, so pre-workout was always magic. But I would use the protein powders in other things to get creative. Like one of my favorite meals, and I still eat this regularly, is I will take a third a cup of egg whites, a third a cup of Greek yogurt, and a third cup of cottage cheese. I would blend that up, a scoop of protein, a half a cup of Kodiak cakes, whip that up, put these little itty bitty baby chocolate chips on them, like the really tiny making ones, and boom, 470 grams or 470 calories with 60 grams of protein in that little
Wow.
breakfast, and it is
Yeah.
bomb. It is bomb.
Yeah. That's
Unfortunately,
awesome.
no syrup, but that's okay.
I would say obviously physically you notice a huge difference when it comes to someone prepping and getting on stage. What was your main takeaway mentally after you completed the competition? Where was your starting point mentally versus after? Like what was affected?
Um, so my starting point mentally before I started training or before the competition itself?
Before you started like training, where were you at mentally versus after you completed it?
A lot of it was confidence. Like I was always kind of a heavier kid, more like a major dad bod type of thing. I couldn't even wear like a tank top because I just looked like I had chicken arms. Um, so I didn't really feel like confident in my own skin per se. And then once I've kept that persistence, but I didn't. This is funny because I was on the podcast with Trevor Farnes with Mountain Ops, and we're really good friends. And he's like, Sid, I didn't even know you were doing this until you were like announced it, and I didn't tell people. Like I didn't post any selfies, and then like a month before the competition, I did like a before and after of like every 3 months, of as a picture of how that progressed. And people were like, "Holy crap, we didn't even know that you were doing this. Why haven't you announced it?" And deep down, I'm like, I've never done this before. I don't even know if it's something my body can handle, what it can do. So I at first the confidence wasn't there, but the key to doing a competition or any really goal is consistency. Was I perfect in this diet? No, occasionally I had a little bit of this, a little bit of that on the side, but I didn't allow that to derail my goal. I just kept on it and kept on and kept on it, and it's amazing what consistency does. Like people think, oh, you just go to the gym and then you look in the mirror, you're supposed to look great. No, but if you do that regularly, it's amazing. Like the 75 hard. One of the reasons why Andy Frisella put that take a picture of you every day is it's amazing to see the before and after. Mike, what was that, like 50 pounds for you?
Yeah, yep, right at 50. It's unbelievable to the stark difference. I mean, that daily accountability was the thing. And as you watch the fat melt off and the muscles start to pop, it's like, wow, very empowering, right? Mentally,
Yeah,
knowing you're in charge.
yeah. So that just the confidence, Canyon, where that came in. And then when I stepped off the stage, um, well, so let me rewind a little bit. when I stepped on the stage, I was like I couldn't focus. Like I looked at my poses, the very first part, because I stepped on the stage 4 times because I was going into different categories. But the first category I went on, like my flex was not there, my lats were not flared, like I was shaking. I looked super awkward. I was afraid of tripping. I'm like, the lights are on you, people are cheering. I'm like, what is going on? And it was just a blur. And then I got off stage and my coach is like texting me like, what happened? And I'm like, I know. So I finally got the grits of it. And then so that's the first part of the competition. I made it to the night showing, and so in between, my coach gave me some burgers and fries in between. Yeah, to make that carb stick to me. I couldn't have water because I still needed to look really cut, but to get those carbs to stick. And I went to do that evening competition, and I looked in the mirror and I just said, you know what, screw it. I don't care what people think of me. The competition, the judges already probably made their decisions. I'm just going to show up, have a good time. I don't care. And I did it, and I freaking killed it. Like, I had the best night, the night show, best flex. And so I left that stage thinking, man, I could do this again. I really feel a lot better about what my future is like as far as maintaining my physique the best I can.
What have you done as a transition? Because you always hear about people that rebound from competitions and they do a complete 180 back to where they start. What have you done to kind of maintain that leaner physique as time goes on?
Yeah, that's a true thing. A lot of guys do that. They just get like, after the competition, everyone says, well, what burger are you going to have? Well, I already had my burger, but honestly, the guilty pleasure meal that I wanted, and to this day, I'm salivating right now talking about it, is pizza. There's a place in Salt Lake that has this deep dish pizza that's like huge, and it is the most guilty pleasure. They like sprinkle pulled pork on it. They drench it in like spicy ranch and barbecue sauce, and just like a pound of cheese. And I went to town on that. I threw it up because I felt so sick, but but I absolutely was in heaven for that brief moment. But I had been coached that this is you want to do what they call a reverse diet. So I went from 240 and I dropped down to 182, is what it came down to. So of course, a lot of that was water weight. Within a week later, I popped up another 10 pounds. And then we went on a cruise to Hawaii. I gained another 5 pounds. And since then, I've gained about 14 pounds from that. But what I've done is I still kept myself in a calorie deficit, but I started adding things more and more. I still kept myself accountable. I still use MyFitnessPal to log all my things. I try to keep my protein still at a good level. But it's the honest truth. I look back at those pictures of looking that shredded. I'm like, man, I wish I looked like that all the time. It's not sustainable. Like it's not like, if you look at my pre-show pictures, like I look sick. Like my eyes are dark. I'm dehydrated. My face is like super thin. Yeah, it looks awful. And so, it looks like I've just been taking Ozempic my whole life. It was nasty. Uh, so now I just try to keep that maintenance. That the new CEO of Mountain Ops, that was with bodybuilding.com, that was the thing he told me right before, get on stage. Just so you know, I did this same thing and I gained like all that weight back. He says you just need to slowly progress into it. So I still in about anywhere from 22 to 2,500 calories just to try to keep that in there. I add a little bit of sugar so that way I'm getting that pump in at the gym because I don't want to lose that performance.
So Sid, is Outlaw Strength Eric McCormick? Is he the one who coached you, or was he helpful, or someone else?
No, I actually had 2 buddies that helped me a lot. One of my friends, Jimmy, here at the gym. One thing that advice I can give to life to anybody: if you want to get fast in the pool, get better at swimming, talk to the fastest swimmers. If you want to get big in the gym, talk to the biggest guys. Like, that's where it is. And Jimmy was the biggest guy and still is the biggest guy at the gym. So I kind of worked with him on nutrition, what I need to eat. I had to show him my macros and my logging, and then take pictures of what my physique looked like so he can kind of look at that. And then I had another friend, his name is Red. He lives up in Washington. He is also a double amputee, and this is kind of a sad story. He's a policeman, and he had kind of some sort of accident, and he's also diabetic, and the healing did not work well for him, and he got infected, and therefore he had to have both of his legs amputated. This was 3 weeks before he was going onto the stage to do his competition. And so he, of course, years gone by, prosthetics, dealing with that and the pain and the struggles with that, he got a little bit bigger. But when he saw what I was doing, he said, "Let me help you." And he was a huge part of keeping me accountable, what to eat, and even that, so much so that he bought a plane ticket from Tacoma to come to my show and was there with me in my competition. And then the beautiful part of this story is he saw that, hey, Sid can do it. He's missing my legs. Why can't I? And so he's now on a diet, and then his goal is into 2026. He wants me and him to share the stage together. So we're going to do a competition.
So you're still doing it
Awesome.
then. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's yeah, so that's why I'm like, I hope I don't get really, really, I don't want to do all that pain again. So I'm trying to keep things tight until we get to that point.
Yeah, that's crazy. So now that you are where you are and you've gained a little bit of the weight back, are you feeling as good as you ever have, like, or better? I mean, how does that feel compared to how you were before?
No, I feel great. Like, I mean, the temptation to eat like an asshole still's there. Like, my guilty pleasure, used to be cereal and pizza. Now it's like popcorn and gummy stuff. Like, I still have battles to do that, but I just try to stay, like, my goal is to stay at a certain weight, and but with a little bit more carbohydrates, it's allowed me to do, like, I can run a lot better, where before, when you're training for a competition, your cardio isn't playing basketball or running for 10 hours or for 2 hours. It's this slow, boring cardio, like you're trying to keep your heart rate not too high but not too low, just enough to burn that fat. And it's long. It's like an hour of like walking on the treadmill. It is so boring, but that's how you do it, without, because if you go too hard, you start eating into that muscle, which you don't want to do.
Whole different deal for sure. So your day to day, do you do a lot of meal prepping? I mean, how do you maintain? You mentioned your wife can't really cook for you when you're doing that kind of a, specific diet. How has that changed, or is it still the same?
There's some things about it that is still the same. So, like for lunch, if I'm not taking clients out, I try to eat obviously healthier things on the items. When I was really deep into the competition, I would bring my scale to, like, wingers, for example. I brought my scale to wingers. I'm like, okay, I need the naked wings, and I have to weigh them before I eat them. And then the client's like, okay, can you tell me what's going on here? This is really weird. So, uh, but to this day, I do some meal prepping. I still have elk and antelope and deer that I eat. Um, my wife is trying to eat healthy too. She actually doesn't need to lose anything. She's fit as a fiddle, but she's trying to stay healthy, because she obviously, I think maybe I motivated her. I don't know, but we follow different apps called macro friendly apps, that kind of keep meals under 500 gram or 500 calories with high proteins. And so we still kind of balance on that, but every once in a while we'll get pizza for the kids and have a slice or two. But yeah, meal prepping is super important, because when you're in a rush and you're doing so many things all the time, it's just so easy to grab something at the gas station or grab fast food. So having that meal prep is It's a pain, but honestly, it's the best tool.
So as far as, I mean, you mentioned you speak all around the country on different occasions. What types of groups do you speak to? Just for the listeners, if they are in an organization that's looking for, somebody to come in and help rev people up or share a inspiring story. What tell us a little bit about that.
Thanks, Mike. I thanks for giving me the chance to really sell myself. So
Well,
I
you said you're a partier, so
yeah, I I started my speaking career just to youth groups, church groups, Boy Scouts, and I slowly started getting some businesses, and then I got a couple corporate gigs and conferences. But I'll speak to any group. My message is about grit and overcoming trials and fear, but I will cater it to whatever your company needs. If you have a problem, I will find a solution for it. There's just so much in my life that I feel like can be beneficial to all groups. Now, I do speak about God. That is the thing, and I'm not going to shun away from that. And so I will put that out there. Obviously, there's certain things with the LDS Church when I speak into those groups that I go into more depth with that. But with, for example, I went to Maine, and Maine is a liberal state. Not all of it, but some of it is. And there's about 2,000 people in this group that I'm speaking to at this conference, and I share my testimony about God and my faith, and afterwards I got a standing ovation, and people coming up to me telling me congratulations. Well, I go to the restroom afterwards, and I come out, and there's this man standing there, and he's got this thick Boston accent, and he's just like, he goes, Sidney, I go to conferences all the time, and man, you got some balls talking about God. It's just, you don't hear that anymore in today's society, and you just talk about God like he's your brother. And I'm like, I was dying, and it is true. Like I'm not afraid of that. But like I said, to answer your question, I will speak to anybody, and I love to find a problem or find the solution to your problem based on my life's experiences. So
that's amazing. Well, and again, for you to take God out of that conversation is to deny your experience, which is, that's what's authentically true. So good for you for keeping that important message in what you're sharing with others.
yeah, I mean, I'm not passing out Book of Mormons. That's not happening. If you want one, I'll give you one. But on the reality, I tell my story, and I'll be like, this is part of my faith. It is who made me who I am, and it's really some of the key people in my life, such as God and our Savior Jesus Christ, that has got me to where I am today. That is the honest truth.
So do you, what's next for you? I know you're still doing the competition bodybuilding. You're going to swim to and from a very difficult to reach place there. So what else? I mean, you thinking about writing a book? Do you? I mean, I'm sure you got some books in you. Is that something you're thinking about or have considered?
Yeah, I have considered that. So I'm part of this group called the National Speakers Association, NSA, and that's part of the reasons why I joined that group to kind of build up um, uh, my speaking career. And also, a lot of these people have written books, very, very famous people. Oh, dropped you for a second. Very, very famous people that have made a living off of being authors. Now, I'm not an author per se, but I feel like I can share my story that can benefit a lot of people. When we went to you and I, Mike, when we were at the Mountain Ops 10-year anniversary,
Canyon was there
the
too, actually. Yeah.
oh yeah, that's right, that's right. The lady that helped Trevor write his book to basically help him with his inspiration, she reached out to me afterwards, and then we've been talking about having a retreat together where we would share ideas. I told her, though, if I'm going to tell this story, it's not going to be a pretty story all the time. Because in all honest to truth, there was, dark things and things in my life, addictions that I brought onto my life to try to escape some of the problems that I dealt with that I feel like is a key part of my story. And I told her, I says, I want to do this, but it's got to be the right timing. So that is in the works right now as we speak. We just haven't got to that point. When I talked to Trevor about writing his book, it's a long process. Like, he had to sit there and use his journal and start writing things and then start compiling it together. And that's just something that I'm just now starting. So that is the long answer to your question, though.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, I know, again, there's a lot of ways to share a story like this. And, I think, one podcast or for a few hours, even a Rogan length podcast wouldn't do your story justice. So I'm sure you got a lot of other wisdom to share that's, we don't have time to get into today.
Well, thank you. And I'm still writing my story. Like, there's still a lot going in my life that I'm learning. Like I said, when you hit 40, your mind really starts thinking a little bit more, I guess, clearer, or the bigger perspective of it. And I just starting to realize I got to figure out what's best for my family, best for the world, not necessarily what's best for me.
Yeah. So outside of just your immediate family and your circle of close friends and coaches and people like that, what other people in your life, extended family, childhood friends, what other people have you been able to help inspire to do some of these difficult things that, maybe they didn't think was possible until they saw Super Sid get out there and crush these goals like you were doing?
Oh man, I that's the one thing that's interesting about what I found doing what I do, and really why I wanted to share my story and speak more and perfect the craft of this is um, is there's people that you motivate that you just don't know. Like, in social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, all that stuff is good, but there's a lot of people that see it that don't make comments, but yet it does impact their life. For example, I was going down to my daughter's soccer tournament down in St. George, and we stopped off at Scipio. And at the gas station was a young lady that checked me out. And, I was wearing my legs. Like I said, I'm more recognizable with my pants off than my pants on. And she says, "I remember you." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "When I was in middle school, you came and spoke and you talked about X, Y, and Z, and I've used that, story about gratitude and the story that you talk about with overcoming, accepting your failures and using it towards your success. I've used that with teaching my own kids." I'm like, "Wait, what? You have kids?" And I'd be like, I mean, it just dawned on me that it's been that long since I started speaking, and then now, she's now taking that to that next level. And then just occasionally, I'll get a message here and there on social media of like a kid that's going through a trouble. I just spoke to a high school basketball team, and I get home from that, and I get this message, this long message of this boy that was really in the dumps because he broke his leg right his senior year. He broke his leg during basketball, and he just thought life was really, pointless after that. And it just gave him a different perspective on that. And so those are the moments that really help me resonate on being sharing this story. So I challenge that with everybody. Like, we all have our own trials and challenges that we are trying to overcome. Mine are a little bit more visible, but I guarantee you there's a lot of people I know that have gone through many hard things, but they just don't feel like they're worthy of sharing that story. I would say don't do that, because you never know, your story might be another person's a survival guide. You just never know how that pulls out. So those are the kind of people that motivate me, that you just don't even know exist until, out of the blue, someone at the gas station or a message on Facebook. So
Yeah, and I know, you and I do have a lot of very common friends, and I know, again, I've watched you inspire Cam Haines and watched him touched at your effort, at some of the runs we've done that he's put on. I know you and I have a common friend, Tate Hale, who I met through this same journey. And, you know, he came by my house with Keith after his elk hunt, on his way up to the airport, and spent about an hour here. And we shared some tears and some hugs. And you know, he's also an amputee, and he's still got his other leg, and he's, you know, considering maybe, because of your example to him, maybe there's a better path for him, that he can continue down that journey and make that difficult decision, right?
Tate is a bad A. He is a tough guy, and his story is remarkable, and he is an amazing guy. Like you said, he's a double amputee. He says I motivate him, but it's the other way around. Like that guy has gone through so many ups and downs, but yet his spirits are still really high. Like his faith in God is a lot stronger than mine. And his story's just about to unfold, because things are starting to turn around for him, and he doesn't even know it. It's coming around. So yeah, Tate's a good example of a guy that's just, people, he's not like on the cover of a magazine, but he may be down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, he and I have shared some conversations about you in particular, and same thing, just, you know, how inspiring you've been to him, and what a great example you've been to him, to how you can push your limits, and how this physical limitation doesn't have to stop you from accomplishing your goals or doing very difficult things. So it's really neat to watch and be a part of that, and to share a little bit of that with him, and that same love and affinity that we both have for you.
Yeah, no, I love Tate. Yeah, I love that you brought him up.
Well, Sid, this has been so much fun. I appreciate you sharing with my son, Kanyon, and also with our audience, some of the things that you've done and that you're continuing to do to push your limits. How do people find you, and how can they follow your journey and learn more about the new and exciting things that you're encountering and working towards right now?
Oh, well, thank you, Mike. And Kanyon, you guys are great. I appreciate you taking the opportunity. I love speaking on a show like this, because I know you guys, and I know a little bit about your background. But so I just want to say thank you. I wish you guys the best of luck of this journey. But just if people want to know more about me, just a chance to plug my speaking opportunities. I'm trying to build a website. I'm trying to get that domain, but it's going to be a little bit harder, because apparently another Sidney Smith that doesn't want anything to do with me won't allow me to do that. But eventually I will have a website up where you can get some inquiries and bookings. But for right now, you can email me, or you can find me on Instagram, TRI_no feet, LinkedIn, or Facebook. I'm probably the only Sidney Smith that's an amputee with Facebook, SIDNEY. And that's probably the best three ways I could think of right now.
Awesome. Well, it's been fun. I look forward to catching you at the Hunt Expo and out and about as we cross paths again. And just wish you all the best of luck in the future. And let me know if I can be helpful in any way. I love supporting you. So,
Well, I appreciate you guys. You guys keep smiling. You guys are always smiling, and everybody knows it. So,
sounds
Love it.
good, brother. All right.
Thank you. We'll see you.
thanks,
Get Primal.
Kanyon.
See
Yep.
ya.